Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am Abe with mysticgenmara.com, a small town mystic from the middle of Idaho. And tonight is our series called Myth and Tarot. This is where I introduce you to a creature from the mythological realm that may or may not be real. And then we do just in general tarot reading for that particular creature. So far we've done some very interesting creatures. Not sure what that was about. We've done things like the Selkies and a few of those different classes. You can check those out in the file on YouTube that's Myth and Tarot on Odyssey. I haven't set up playlists yet, so they're just kind of scattered throughout. But tonight we're going to do one on, 'tis the season, right? Leprechauns. So these little guys come from Irish folklore, and by the way we know them today, and the term leprechaun, which is, I can't even say the original because I don't speak that much Gaelic, but the way we reference them today actually came from an author in 1825 by the name of T. Crofton Croker. And he first wrote about them in his works called The Fairy Legends and the Traditions of South Ireland. So that's kind of how we get our idea of them today. Now, don't get me wrong, they are usually classified as a solitary male fairy, and they usually are bearded, and tradition going back quite a ways from, again, what I understand of how they describe these little guys, we're talking several hundred years. So even before T. Crofton Croker wrote about them, they were usually seen with a coat generally that had tails, which is interesting considering that was kind of a more southern European, like British thing. But these little guys apparently had, some of the descriptions anyway, have them with them before this time, before British influence really, and they usually have some kind of a top hat. So that's kind of how we see them today still, but that was some of the earliest descriptions of them. More modern tales, as in post 1850-ish, has leprechauns being seen as shoemakers. And there's a reason for this. Or as serial icons, which a lot more of us probably know, especially if you were raised in the 80s especially. There's one particular follow your lucky charm, or get your lucky charms, you know. The one thing that has remained consistent, though, is they have a pot of gold or a bag of gold, depending on the story, and that they're charged with protecting it, rather ferociously in some cases. The gold is what we would call at the end of the rainbow, and back in the day that meant mere mortals will never be able to reach the end of a rainbow and actually access it. Fully aware, there are times when you can actually find the spot where a rainbow touches the earth. I've stood in those a couple of times. It's an odd feeling to know that you're standing in a light beam like that. It's weird. It is possible, but in the olden days, a rainbow was a distant magical thing. They didn't fully understand water during certain time periods. Don't get me wrong, if you go back far enough, they were way more technologically advanced than we give them credit for. But for the purposes of our story here, the gold at the end of the rainbow was literally something you could never find, and it was only through magical means, i.e. trapping a leprechaun, that you could catch the gold. So some of the legends in Ireland have leprechauns as a form of sprite who always carries and some of the stories were weird about this, because some said a single gold coin in a purse, but the purse never was empty. So even if you took the coin out, there was a gold coin in it. So it's kind of like a constantly refilling gold coin or little purse. In this particular legend, they were very serious to the point of being grumpy, stern, ill-tempered, very hostile, watch out for your shins. The more modern retelling tends to make them a little more genteel, more nice, more happy, you could say. Although, if you look into some of the stories, a lot of them would carry canes, and that's the reason I say watch out for your ankles and shins, because they tended to swing first, ask questions later. Just the old stories. Oh, by the way, odd side note here. Ghost Hunters, back on the Sci-Fi Channel, late 90s, early 2000s, they were the group of plumbers that would run, they went around and did ghost hunting. They had, in one of their videos where they were in Ireland, they actually got videos of 4 little creatures, like a thermal image of them, and it was in a place that was supposedly haunted or possessed or controlled by the wee folk, leprechauns. And so if you can find it on, I think YouTube probably has it somewhere, I haven't looked for a while, but it was one of those ones that kind of creeped me out a little bit, because I've always been a little fascinated, okay, not a little, a lot fascinated with the fairy culture. And they actually had the little leprechaun type beings, you can see them in their infrared, following these guys around. Not like 1 or 2, at one point there was 4 of them following these guys, and it was their stationary cameras, they keep seeing them. It was pretty cool. Total side note there. But in folklore, back to the story at hand, in an 1888 account, leprechauns are not professional cobblers, shoemakers. They have had to learn how to fix their own shoes, according to this account, since they run around and cause so much mischief, they literally will run out of their shoes. So they tended to start mending their own shoes because they needed to fix their feet somehow. And in this particular legend, when they're mending their shoes, because they get really focused in on the project that they're doing, so they're not paying attention to the world around them, this is when it's possible to catch them. And once caught, they will grant 1 wish, says the lore. And it's generally something to do with finances. And it's a way to gain their freedom. Now, because they are a creature of fairy, it doesn't really matter what the wish is. You're not going to get exactly what you asked for, because fairies can't lie. That is the one thing with them that is very clear through traditions. But if you're not extremely specific in what you're asking for, they will find a loophole and they will exploit that loophole. So you're going to get your wish. It just might not be the way you expected it to be. Same thing with the leprechauns. They tend to be little tricksters to get their way. So there is an author, David Russell McNally, I think that's how you say his name, and he claims in his writings and his talks and such that a leprechaun, because leprechauns are exclusively male, are the sons of an evil spirit, like a demon, that has copulated with a degenerate female fairy. It doesn't really matter if it's a Seelie or an unseelie, light court, dark court, doesn't really matter to them. It's a degenerate, so someone who's kind of twisted a little bit more than normal for the fairy. And this is how the evil spirit seduces the fairy, or the fairy seduces the evil spirit, because from the way he talks in his work is it can go both directions. The result, though, is almost exclusively leprechaun. And they're not good, but they're not evil. They're basically a creature born for chaos. And that's what they do. Probably, and I don't know this for a fact because I can't remember the full story of Rumpelstiltskin, but from what my memory of it is, because it's been a long time, Rumpelstiltskin would be a prime example of a leprechaun. Kind of grumpy, kind of but will do things for you if you can guess, or they'll trick you out of information, basically. So they're kind of ornery little creatures, but that's kind of when you see the son of an evil spirit and a degenerate fairy, the old concept of Rumpelstiltskin comes to mind. So, who knows? In our more modern views and renditions artistically of leprechauns, we tend to see their little hats and coats in bright green with golden accents, little shamrocks on their jackets, things like that. But this has not always been the case. It literally has only been in the last 75 to 100 years that we've taken that particular view of them. In the older legends and myths, they wore red with the golden accents. A lot of the times you would see them with a lacy gold at the neck. And in both stories, the shoes are what we would call buckled shoes. Kind of think the pilgrim shoes in the modern legends that we have. So they're just like a black shoe with the big buckle over the top of it. And one of the descriptions that I found kind of odd, it almost makes me think like they're anti-vampiric. And the reason I say that, when I go through this next part, you'll understand. Their little red coats would have 7 rows of golden buttons. So there's 7 buttons down, and each row had 7 buttons across. 49 buttons to close their coat. That just seems like a lot of buttons. And with that particular patterning of numbers, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like, you'd make a vampire extremely paranoid because they like to count things. So that was just an odd little tidbit about some of the lore about the red jackets would have 7 rows of 7 buttons. And stories also vary a lot as to the height. The maximum height I have found in any of my research on this subject was that leprechauns are about 3 feet. That is the max. But I've seen stories that they're as short as 18 inches, and if they actually are children of the Sprite clan of Fae, 12 to 18 inches would be an average height for them. So, because they are Irish, they have red hair and very red auburnish beards, although an older leprechaun and they're near immortal. They can be killed, but as far as natural death, because they are part of the Fae, natural death is a foreign thing to them, so it's not like they're just going to lay down one day and fall asleep and die. That's not how leprechauns work. They usually have to be unalived by somebody else. So in the older leprechauns, and I'm talking 300 and 400 years old, you'll start to have the white, the gray beards, along with the white and gray hair. So most of them, going back through quite a few years, centuries of the details and descriptions, most of them have some kind of a spectacle, the little round glasses, or some other form of glasses. It's a kind of a common theme amongst the leprechaun lore. And the old lore, and I don't know why I have always found this fascinating to me, but they tended to have the white lace around their throats and around their wrists on their shirts. Lorena McKenneth actually has a really cool song about the Highwayman, talking about a bunch of lace at his throat. And as I'm seeing the description of these leprechauns with how it's described is the way that she describes it in her, it's actually based on an old poem called The Highwayman, but she sings it. It's really cool. Anyway, sorry, I keep getting distracted. So how popular, in reality, how popular are these solitary male figures, leprechauns? Surprisingly, very, very popular. They have their own cereal. I referenced it earlier, Lucky Charms. We have the Notre Dame. Oops, hit the right button. It would help, huh? The Notre Dame's Fighting Irishman. He's technically a leprechaun. The Boston Celtics. Make sure I got the right one here. They actually use a leprechaun, their Lucky the Leprechaun, as their mascot. There is the horror movie franchise, and if you haven't seen it, it stars Warwick Davis. Ta-da! And it is in today's culture, it is hysterical. The first time I watched it, I couldn't believe how flippin' funny it was, and this was probably a good 15 years ago, like maybe even 20 when it first came out. And for those of you who are Jennifer Aniston fans, this is one of her younger appearances. I think this was before Friends, so she was only 18, 19, maybe 20 in this movie. So it's got some really big, what we would call big names now, but at the time it was a schlocky B-rated horror film. And it actually turned into quite the franchise. The first four, personally, were the only good ones. When they went, I think there was like Leprechaun in the Hood and Leprechaun in Space and Leprechaun and fill in the blank. Once you start getting into that, to me, they took away from the real entertainment of the first two or three. The fourth one was acceptable, but anything after that, sorry, but I don't really have a lot of patience or respect for it, because it just they tried so hard to keep the momentum going like a Freddy or Jason movie. No, sorry. Anyway, the good old days of horror films. Disney, though, back in the day, I think this was in the 70s, got on the bandwagon of leprechauns. They always had some kind of fairy tale creature. But Darby O'Gill and the Little People. It's a movie I remember watching growing up, and I saw it a lot. This is Darby O'Gill. The taller one is Darby O'Gill, and the little one is the king of the leprechauns, who he actually was able to kidnap. The movie is rather entertaining. I was kind of surprised. I rewatched it a few years ago, and it was like, I forgot how much chaos was in that movie, but it's funny chaos. It's not like chaos for pain. It was pretty funny. But we've had leprechauns kind of imbued into our what do I want to call it? Your subconscious, the culture, even without really meaning to. But we have a lot of Irish and Scottish descent people, especially in the East, and they've filtered to across the country, and they brought their legends and their lore with them. And this is a big reason why we have so much information and why we have them in so many places throughout. Sorry, I need to find one more thing. But that's why we have so many of them throughout the different sporting events, cultural references. I mean, leprechauns are kind of everywhere at this point. And that's, to me, what makes them kind of fascinating, and the fact that they're one of the only clan of the Fae that is exclusively male. Most of the different clans, there's a female aspect to them, allowing that clan to grow on its own, allowing the clan to interbreed with the other clans that are around, and there's a lot of them. I did a video on that a while back, and there's, several hundred, if you wanted to really break it down into the proper ways of doing it. There are several hundred different clans of the Fae, but this particular one is a group of solitary hermit-type males, and it's because of how they were supposedly created through the breeding of a basically demon and more philandering fairy, so to speak. So, with that's kind of ties up most of the history part of our little buddies here. And now we'll move on to doing the tarot, which I use the Celtic Cross Tarot spread for these types of readings. So what we're doing is doing a tarot reading exclusively for the I almost said something very inappropriate, and I do apologize. For the fairies. So we're going to do a full spread just for the leprechauns, kind of looking at where their energy is now, whether you believe they're running around, causing chaos and mischief, or if you think that it's just a fun story to tell children, which is also fun. We'll just take a quick peek into the realm of the leprechaun and see what the cards have to say. And I am using the Tarot Art Nouveau, also linked in the description if you are interested, as the deck of choice for this evening. So, I have a very small desk here, so bear with me as I try not to cause crashing of my own. The first card, which is the heart of the matter, the significator, this is the fairy, or the leprechauns themselves. It is the Five of Wands. Ooh, they're looking to the past. They're looking to better days gone by. They're kind of stuck in the glory days of their past. They're reminiscing. So where they're at in the moment, right at this time, is they're really not impressed with the modern world. Can't really blame them, but they're focusing on this past. They're looking to the back. They're looking at their glory days. And having the wands there, there's a little bit of fire. Like, they want that passion. They want to bring back when they were respected more. Because today, like I said, we've kind of teased them down. They're mascots and serial icons. But back in the day, the leprechauns on their own could be a very fearsome creature. And they're looking back to the better days of yesteryear. So the thing that is challenging them in the moment is the Eight of Chalices, the ever-eternal, I'm going to have to censor this one with my little finger here, the ever-eternal search for emotional stability. So they are looking to the past, and the obstacle, the thing that's crossing them, is their emotions. They're looking to the past, wanting that past, and their emotions are telling them, dude, you can't have that. Yeah, it hurts. It's supposed to hurt, but you have to live in the now. And so they're kind of at this crossroads, this frustration of, it was better back then, but their emotions are telling them it's only that good because you're looking back at it. When you were there, it wasn't that great either. So there's this little push-pull, but being the Eight of Chalices, it's that continual up and down. So they have good, better days and they have hard days, but in the moment, right now, they're looking into the past with kind of like they want to go back to that. But their challenge is they can't because they're in the now moment, and even creatures of magic have to live in the moment. They can't go back in time all the time. Don't get me wrong, they can do it for short periods, but they can't live there. So they're above, the things that are above them is the Hanged Man. So this is a major arcana card, and this is telling them that there's a lot going on, and it's time to look at things from a different perspective. They want to look at the past and be like, oh man, it was so much better. But the Hanged Man, as their higher influence, is saying, look at things from a different perspective. It really wasn't that great back then either, but people don't believe now. Different way to look at things. Meaning you can get away with more mischief, you can get away with more chaos. So their higher energy coming in is saying, quit looking at the past is so great. You're in a prime area right now because people's belief is so low that you can actually cause a lot more chaos in the now and have a lot more fun. So yeah, the past was great, cool, yeah. But look at things now. People don't believe anymore. People have stopped believing in, well, anything, to be honest with you. And so the Hanged Man's coming forward telling the Leprechaun clan, this is your time to shine. You can do a lot of chaos and no one will know. And when they do figure it out, it's going to boost your energy because the Fae lives off of, one of the things they live off of is human energy. Emotions. So the subconscious part of them, which is what's below them, is the King of Swords. I'll have to edit this one too. I love this deck. That's one problem with it, is YouTube would not be happy with me. So their subconscious is the King of Swords. Their subconscious is trying to get them to cut away, clear out the past. The past is over. It's great to have a couple of memories, but seriously, kids, we're moving forward here. So their subconscious mind is trying to get them to work with their higher mind, which is the hanged man, to step into this higher energy. Cut away the things that are not working for you. Cut away that obsessive addiction to the past is what their subconscious mind is trying to convince them of. And they're still looking back there going, I'd rather be there, but they're working against their subconscious mind and their higher mind, because they're both saying, dude, the past is in the past, move forward. So let's look at their immediate pasts. This is the past within our world. It's the 10 of Chalices. So this was their glory days. This is what they want to go back to. This partnership with the other clan of the Fae, the partnership with certain aspects of humanity, generally to cause chaos and mischief. But they're looking to those time periods when they were able to be seen in a more, in their mind, more positive light as rulers of chaos and, mischief, not as mascots for sporting teams where no one even dies. Like, they're kind of bored with that. Just that, I'm reading the cards here. They're wanting to go back to those days where they could be called upon and basically sicked on a neighbor who wronged them, wronged the human that they were tied to. Because just like all the other Fae, the Leprechauns would actually attach to, sometimes it was an individual, but other times it would attach to a family line, and they would kind of protect them, keep the chaos at bay for that family. But if someone wronged that family, then they could go have their fun. And so that's the kind of stuff they're looking at in the past, is they don't, because people don't believe like they used to, because we've educated ourselves into stupidity, they are looking to the past like, dude, back in the day we had a lot more fun because people still believed. So let's look at the immediate future, the next 6 months or so for them, and it's the Hierophant, which is a time of solitary learning. Considering these are solitary little fairies, that solitary part's kind of a moot point, but this is a time for them to pull back, to kind of recollect. I mean, this month they're going to be busy. It's St. Paddy's Day. Everybody's, everyone's a little Irish this month. And so the Leprechauns are getting to come out and play a little bit right now. But over the next 6 months or so, they're going to pull back and they're going to reevaluate things. And this is where that, hopefully their subconscious and their higher mind will get together with them and be like, dude, you're in the prime area for some entertainment, so to speak. Because people don't believe anymore, and what a better time to really start to push the boundaries and the level of what you are, and kind of push people's doubts away that there is another world out there. And what better representation to show that the Fae still exists than have Leprechauns pop up again. So let's look at, where are we at here? The attitude. So this is their personal attitude, kind of how they're feeling in the moment. It is the 6 of Swords. So they're getting a little feisty. They're getting a little, we're going to go out and do our own thing. We're starting to get a little more riled up. So their attitude in the moment is kind of, I don't know if you could see her face, because she's kind of got that sly little look going on, if it would focus, saying, I got some fun things to do tonight, and we're going to go to paint the town red. We're going to cause a little chaos. We're going to have a little mischief. So their attitude right now, even though they're looking to the past, is they're kind of feeling frisky. Like they want to go back to the old days of causing chaos and a little bit of mischief. Nothing too bad, but enough to cause people to start to question things, which is what their goal is. So their immediate environment is the Hermit. So again, we're looking at their environment. They're still solitary. They're still out there. They're still learning. They're still educating. They're educating through their chaos. They're wanting to remind us and educate us and help us understand that the Fae still exist, the fairies still exist, as well as the other paranormal creatures. It's just that we have scienced them into oblivion, and the Hermit and the Hierophant are working together. So you've got the future energy coming forward with the Hierophant, which is a wise man, solitary, but you also have the Hermit, which is the person who's pulling away, also wise, and they're also educating and teaching. So you've got this educating and teaching energy coming forward for them. So they're really wanting to bring themselves back into the spotlight, but they're having to understand they need to step away before they can launch themselves forward. So their hopes and fears. It's the One of Wands. So their hopes and their fears are being forgotten. They don't want to restart. They don't want to fade into the mists. They want to be able to still have a place. The thing is as long as we remember them in general, they're not going to fade completely, but that is a fear for them. They don't want to disappear. And when enough people quit believing, the Fae especially, the fairy realm especially, is affected by that. They need us, we need them, because without the fairies to tend to the earth elemental energies, humanity doesn't have a lot of hope, because we don't we don't take care of it the way they do. Don't get me wrong, they fight and carry on just as much as the humans do, but their commitment to preserving the land, there's entire clans of the Fae, the brownies, the leprechauns, and a few other ones, that they interact with humans a lot, but their goal is to keep the planet healthy. So their fear, the leprechauns' fear, is to become invisible, to disappear from our awareness, because we do happen to live in a symbiotic. Even though they want to be solitary and cause a little bit of chaos, that is what their concern is they don't want to become completely irrelevant. So the outcome. So the overall end of this is the Eight of Swords. There's some sadness, there's some frustration. I mean, there's some positive aspects coming because they get to be a little mischievous this month especially, but they're not seeing a very happy ending to everything. They're seeing chaos, but not the kind that they like. They're seeing kind of a tumultuous end to what they have been doing for years, and that's not working for them. You've got the Swords, so there's some hard truths that they're having to deal with. Being the Eight of Swords, we're talking some education and some learning that goes on. So they're having to learn some lessons. They're having to change the way they think. They don't really want to. They're, some of these creatures, some of leprechauns are, 400 or 500 years old, if not older. So teach an old dog new tricks type of a thing. So they're struggling with this, but they're still willing to adapt and work on it, is what the cards are saying. So I know these are just kind of fun little ways to look at things from a different perspective, and I hope you appreciate, or at least found a chuckle in here. With that, if you enjoyed this type of content, please drop a like on the video, subscribe, and know when I go live or when I have new videos up. So you can, I think there's a little bell icon on Facebook, YouTube, so you can click on that and it will notify you when I go live, when I'm doing new videos, things like that. But what do you think? Do you think the leprechaun stories are real? Do you think they're 100% myth? Do you think the truth is somewhere between real and fake? And when you look around at things this month especially, notice where we see the wee people. Notice the different places they pop up. I referenced sporting mascots and cereal and a Disney movie and a really entertaining horror series. But where else have you seen them? Please drop in the comments below and let me know what you think. Like I said, if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like. I do Myth and Tarot, which is introducing a new character from the mythological realm, every other Tuesday. The other Tuesdays I do Occult and Crochet, where I introduce some leader from religion or spirituality or the occult. This next week I'm going back to a little bit more occult and less into religion. So if you are interested, swing by next Monday. With that, I will let you guys go. Hope you have an awesome rest of your evening, and if you have any thoughts, suggestions, ideas, drop those below as well. Talk to you later.